if you could call that young lady coming out of Kansas, KU, and tell her anything, if you could go back in time and have that conversation and call her and say, hey, Barbara, listen, what would you tell her?
I think one of the most important things I would say is that life is an experience, and you should not limit that. And one of the ways in which it's most important to expand that is to travel, and if possible, earlier in your career than I did. I did not live and work abroad until about 6 years ago. And so I wish I had had that opportunity much earlier in my career, because the world is a fascinating and complicated place, and you can't read enough to inform yourself about how the world works. You need to go and see it on someone else's turf.
I love that. That's really good. I really, that's great stuff. On that note, I recently interviewed somebody that said, hey, I just lived in a third world country for the last 5 years, and it changed my life.
Exactly. Yes.
He was telling me, he's like, for example, when you run out of milk, you just go down to the store and get a gallon of milk, and you don't even think about it. He goes, it's not like that everywhere else.
Oh, no. And when I left my last big corporate job, which was a storage tech after they had merged with Sun, I decided I would not go back into a corporate role, and I would do international consulting as long as it was about business or education.
Love it.
And I ended up doing just some sort of small gigs in Vietnam, and started traveling in Southeast Asia, and ultimately ended up traveling in Myanmar.
Love it.
And after a few years of doing odd jobs around Southeast Asia, sort of short consulting, I worked for a Norwegian impact investing company for 4 years in Myanmar, right at the time when all the policy reforms were changing, and right in the middle of their first national elections. And it was an extraordinary opportunity to see a developing country, very rich in natural resources, but very poor in government processes and support for their citizens and population, and learn about education and healthcare and food supply and economic realities. And of course, on a funny anecdote, the banking system when I moved there was really quite immature. And if you lease an apartment or a flat, you have to pay the rent 12 months in advance in cash.
Wow.
Yes, which actually is a huge detriment to small business growth, because you have to have the capital up front for 12 months of your lease expense. And so there was a foreign exchange bank there. I had accounts in the Myanmar currency chat and an account in US dollars. And when I needed to pay the rent on an office or a flat, I would have to take out literally bags full of Myanmar currency and hire these very strong but very small Myanmar young men to physically carry it on their shoulders to wherever I was meeting with the landlord.
Wow.
So yeah, I would bring $10,000 in brand new crisp US Treasury dollars on the plane over to Myanmar, in order to actually fill that bank account.
Yeah, if you get a chance to work overseas in some projects like that, yeah, it'll definitely open your eyes to some things, for sure.
Yeah.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.